Okay, reading from the book Stories from Lafcadio Hearns. Today's story is The Funny Old Woman. Long, long ago, there lived a funny little old woman. She liked to do two things. She liked to laugh, and she liked to make dumplings of rice flour. One day, she began to make some dumplings for dinner. But one of them fell onto the floor. Now there was a hole in the earth floor of the old woman's kitchen. The dumpling fell into that hole and disappeared. The old woman tried to reach it. She knelt on the floor and put her hand into the hole. But suddenly the earth broke under her and she fell deep into that hole. She fell to the bottom of the hole, but she was not hurt at all. She stood up and looked around her. She was on a road, just like the road in front of her house. It was light down there. She could see rice fields around her, but there was no one in them. She was in another country, but she did not know how or why she got there. The old woman looked all around her for her dumpling, but she couldn't see it. In front of her, the road was very steep. It led to the bottom of the hill. She said, "It's rolled down the hill." So she ran down the hill and cried out, my dumpling, where is my dumpling?" Then she saw a stone Jizo by the side of the road. She said, "O Lord Jizo, did you see my dumpling?" The Jizo answered, "Yes, I've seen your dumpling. It rolled past me down the road. But don't go after it. There is an evil Oni down there. It eats people." But the old woman only laughed and ran down the road. She continued to cry, my dumpling, where is my dumpling?" She came to another stone Jizo, and she asked it, "O kind Lord Jizo, did you see my dumpling?" And the Jizo said, "Yes, I saw your dumpling. It passed me a few moments ago. But you must not follow it. There is an evil Oni there. It eats people." But the old woman laughed and ran on. She continued to cry out, my dumpling, where is my dumpling?" And she came to another Jizo and asked it, "Oh dear Lord Jizo, did you see my dumpling?" But the Jizo said, "Don't talk about your dumpling now. Here comes the Oni. Hide there behind my sleeve and don't make any noise." So the old woman hid behind the Jizo's sleeve. The Oni came up to them. It stopped and bowed to the Jizo and said, "Good morning, Lord Jizo." The Jizo said good morning too, very politely. Then the Oni suddenly lifted his head and smelled the air. He cried out, Lord Jizo, I smell a smell of man somewhere. Can't you smell it too?" "Oh," said the Jizo, "perhaps you are making a mistake." "Oh no," said the Oni. He smelled the air again. "I really can smell the smell of a man." Then the old woman laughed loudly. Teh-heh-heh, teh-heh-heh. She could not stop it. And the Oni put out his big hairy hand and pulled her out from behind the Jizo. She was still laughing. Teh-heh-heh, teh-heh-heh. Then the Jizo said, "What are you going to do with that old woman? You must not hurt her." "I won't," said the Oni, "but I will take her home to cook for us." Teh-heh-heh, teh-heh-heh, laughed the old woman. "Very well," said the Jizo, "but you really must be kind to her. If you aren't kind to her, I shall be very angry with you." "I won't hurt her at all," said the Oni. "I only want her to do a little work for us every day. Goodbye now, Lord Jizo." Then the Oni took the old woman down the road until they came to a deep, wide river. There was a boat there. The Oni put her into the boat and took her across the river to his house. It was a very large house. He led her at once into the kitchen. He told her to cook some dinner for the two of them, because another Oni lived in the same house with him. he gave her a small wooden rice paddle and said, "You must always put only 1 grain of rice into the pot. When you stir that 1 grain of rice with this rice paddle, then that 1 grain will grow into many grains, and the pot will be full." So the old woman did that. She put just 1 rice grain into the pot, and she stirred it with the rice paddle. When she was stirring, the 1 rice grain became 2, then 4, then 8, then 16, then 32, then 64. Every time she moved the rice paddle, the rice became twice as much as before. In a few moments, the big pot was full. After that, the funny old woman stayed a long time in the house of the Oni. Every day she cooked for him and for all his friends. She wasn't afraid of the Oni because he never hurt her, and the rice paddle made her work very easy. An Oni always eats much more than a man eats, and she always had a great deal of rice to cook. But she was always alone in the kitchen, and she became sad. She wanted very much to go back to her little house and make her dumplings. There. And one day when the 2 Oni were out somewhere, she tried to run away from the Oni's house. First she took the rice paddle and hid it in her clothes. Then she went down to the river. No one saw her, and the boat was there at the bank. She got into it and pushed it out in the river. She could row very well, and soon she was far from the bank. She rowed as fast as she could, but the river was very wide. She was not 1/4 of the way across when the Oni came back to the house. They found that their cook was not in the kitchen, and they saw that the rice paddle was not in the pot. They ran down to the river, and they saw the old woman in the boat. When she saw them, she rowed faster than before. Perhaps the Oni could not swim, and they had no other boat, but they wanted to catch the funny old woman before she got to the other side of the river. They decided to drink up all the water in the river. So they knelt down on the bank and began to drink the water very fast. The old woman was now more than halfway across the river, and she rowed and rowed, but soon the water became very, very low, and the Oni could walk across. Then the old woman stopped rowing and took the rice paddle from her clothes. She held it up, and she made very funny faces at the Oni. The Oni opened their mouths and laughed. But when they laughed, all the river water came out of their mouths, and the river became full again. The Oni could not cross it. The funny old woman reached the other bank and ran away very quickly. She ran and ran until she reached her house again. After that, she was very happy. She could make dumplings when she wanted to, and she had a paddle to make rice for her. She sold her dumplings to her friends and neighbors, and she soon became a very rich woman. The end.